Hi there. You're probably wondering where I am and what I'm doing. Well, where I am is St. Petersburg, Russia, modern day. There's still blackouts. Blackouts are still common here at this time. But what I'm doing is researching the life behind the famous acting practitioner, Vsevolod Meyerhold. Vsevolod Emilovich Meyerhold was born in Penza Oblast, part of the Russian Empire, on the 28th of January 1874 into the wealthy family of German vodka distiller Emil Meyerhold. He was the youngest of 8 children and so had to work hard to make an impression. As the youngest child, Meyerhold recognised that he would never inherit the family business and so did not feel obliged to take on all of his father's values. Instead, it says here he mixed with the workers from the distillery and attended the theatre and music concerts, gaining a great creative influence from Russia's artistic scene. After completing school in 1895, Meyerhold studied law at Moscow University, but never completed his degree. He was torn between studying theatre and pursuing a career as a violinist. After failing his audition for the university orchestra in 1896, he went into 2 years of actor training with director and playwright Vladimir Nemirovich Denchenko at Moscow Philharmonic Dramatic School. It says here in this history book that after graduating in 1898, Meyerhold joined the Moscow Art Theatre, or the MAT, playing a remarkable variety of parts, 18 roles from blind prophets to princes, as well as developing a passion for Anton Chekhov's writing. Perhaps most important, however, was his time with highly innovative and self-critical actor-director Stanislavski. Now, Meyerhold's time with Stanislavski was most influential, not because he followed his teacher's ways, which he didn't, but because both men shared a fundamental belief in the complete training of an actor and in the need to experiment and progress continually. Meyerhold's life was abruptly ended in the basement of a Moscow prison at age 66. He had dedicated over 2/3 of his life to the Russian theatre, and after a lifelong career of innovation and experiment, his presence as a theatrical figurehead was deemed too dangerous by the Soviet authorities. He was tortured and persuaded to confess to charges of spying, and finally shot. Meyerhold was fascinated with the training of actors to perform with physical precision in complex movements, much like that of dancers. He questioned ways of going about placing the emphasis on the actor as opposed to props, relying on physical plasticity and expression, and allowing the director to transform the words of the playwright. Meyerhold found this through stylizing his theatre, allowing actors to be choreographed within the space of the stage. He believed that rhythm was the most important part of an actor's training and performance. Brun says, "It's all a question of rhythm, of movement and action. Rhythm with a capital R." What fascinated Meyerhold as an acting practitioner was how to go about making his audience question his work rather than having everyone agree with it. His was a theatre based expressively on contradiction, a theatre which strove not to smooth out problems or to resolve paradoxes, but to let them resonate within the minds of his performers and his audiences. This private library on Meyerhold is not the sole reason I've travelled to St. Petersburg today. I, in fact, came also to interview a particular expert who happens to also be from Australia, but she's living in St. Petersburg at the moment, and I interviewed her today and asked her what questions about actor training or performance fascinated Meyerhold in particular. Her name is Lynda O'Brien, and this is what she had to say.
I think that Meyerhold was like all of the practitioners, both at the time that his work was emerging, before him and after him, were most interested in just producing truth. And even though his work was very based on image and movement and finding kind of a stylized or almost a method for producing real and truthful human events, that wasn't connected back to, I guess, the dominant form, which would have been script, that he, like Chekhov, like Stanislavski, like all of the people around that time that he was springboarding from, was looking for truth. And I think it's really interesting that some of the most amazing images of Meyerhold's work were salvaged from the Stalinist appallingness that ended his life by Lee Strasberg.
Meyerhold accepted Stanislavski's invitation to return as co-director of the Moscow Art Theatre studio, and this offered Meyerhold a chance to develop an alternative directorial approach. The restrictions of naturalism, the attempt to recreate life on stage in all its detail, resulted in a move towards symbolism, the attempt to suggest and evoke a life beyond the material world. As a director who celebrated the physicality of the actor, Meyerhold's central problem with realism is that it reduces the expressivity of the performer. Furthermore, the tremendous attention to detail denied the audience and performer their right to imagine. Meyerhold wanted the spectator and the actor to have equal responsibility in the creation of the play. After just a year back at the Moscow Art Theatre, he left to St. Petersburg in order to directly challenge Stanislavski's methods. Meyerhold views the relationship between the actor or performer and the audience as one where both should be aware of one another at all times. They are aware of what each other is really there for, similarly to the circus, where an audience will pay to watch a clown, and the clown will act in a certain way to please the audience. The actor will perform in a certain way to tell a story and give a message. When I interviewed Lynda earlier today, I asked her, how did Meyerhold view the relationship between the actor or performer and the audience?
I think he wanted to create an instant connection and a truth. I think that he, I guess like Brecht, whose work came around the same time as Meyerhold, and they both were very politically motivated, wanted to tell great stories that had an immediate translation to audience, that didn't leave audiences guessing at subtext, that presented stories so that they could predict, adapt, understand, and then move forward with connecting it to their own lives. So Meyerhold, whilst he was trained by Danchenko and he was trained in that world, left there in many ways and moved into a more modern contemporary world like Brecht, where truth was about what you presented to an audience so that they could understand in the form of movement as he did it, rather than leaving an audience to guess by going into some textual world and trying to find a more psychological connection to the action. We are in a world where we're creating stories physically that, whilst the movements can seem quite abstract, cumulatively tell great stories.
The central rhythm, as we talked about earlier, which reinforces all Meyerhold's training, is made up of 3 parts. Together, they constitute the basic structure of his training method: biomechanics. This is one of Meyerhold's specific contributions to the development of acting and performing, theory and practice, and includes the preparation for an action, for example, reaching back before throwing as a kind of gestural prologue, the action itself, for example, the actual throwing, and the end point of the cycle. This is the rest at the end of any movement. For example, crouching to rest hands on legs at the end of a race. This rhythm for the actor provides structure, gives freedom within set boundaries, and makes you think in musical terms from the outset. From his early training as a violinist, Meyerhold was conversant in musical terminology and gained first-hand experience in music drama in his time at the Imperial Theatres from 1907 to 1917. Above all, he wanted his actors to embody the concept of musicality, even if there was no actual music being played. He wanted them to act in the manner of a musical composition in order to lend fluidity, contrast, shape and colour to everything they did. Meyerhold experimented with the use of masks in his productions and believed that masks could both conceal and reveal. He even argues that they are a central part of a spectator's experience. Meyerhold's definition of a mask could be created by makeup, hairstyle, or even facial expressions, not necessarily being made from cardboard. The mask can be seen as an overarching metaphor for the type of work Meyerhold wanted to create. A stylized, external, non-psychological popular theatre. Meyerhold's contribution to staging can be seen in his intentions to represent a certain place, rather than attempting to replicate it. Similarly, this can be seen in the staging of Bertolt Brecht. Meyerhold and Brecht both understood naturalism and realism, Stanislavski's ways, and agreed that if an actor truly believes they are Hamlet, for example, then the audience will also. However, they were against this idea, instead seeking to make both the actor and audience aware that they were part of a production.
Meyerhold, for a couple of reasons, I guess his work was, there was a political motivation there in what Meyerhold tried to do initially that obviously carried straight through to Brecht. Most importantly, I think they both share the need to present a truth which is accessible to an entire audience. The practitioners like Meyerhold and Brecht that allow an audience to embrace something for what it is, rather than leaving an audience playing guessing games, mean that an audience unite in front of the work. So therefore, our ability to all relate to what's being given to us, because it's a truth, because we're being shown something that every single person can identify, means that you allow an audience to galvanise and move forward in understanding. And there's a sense of unity and joy, I think, for audience in that moment. And with Meyerhold's work, I think that's what we find, and why the work continues now. And you look at again, practitioners like Brecht, like Meyerhold, their work continues to influence theatre today because it creates that audience connection immediately. We're not left guessing. And the realists, and I kick myself for saying this because I could sit and read Chekhov tomorrow, and he is such a gifted, beautiful, amazing writer, but the psychological depths to which we need to plummet in order to connect with that truth means that we bond to Chekhov in a separate way, because my truth's different to your truth, is different to their truth. But with Brecht, with Meyerhold, we watch, we learn together. It's movement that is part of every single moment of every day.
Meyerhold's opinion that having mixed reviews for a production, having some people who loved it, some people who didn't like it, being a good thing is really important to me, as I can see the value in creating discussion between audience members. Whereas if everyone liked the production, there's no real conversation started after it. I now see the value in creating art that produces conflicting opinions, so it resonates a lot more. I also believe that Meyerhold's attempt to create actors with refined balance, coordination and other physical abilities are very important, as I want to learn as much as I can about acting, and Meyerhold's exercises will most certainly help out.
The dactyl is the foundation movement that begins and ends each etude. I like to think of it as bookends. Now in the dactyl, you'll see the preparation, the action, and the finish. And take a look at this. There's the preparation, the action, and the finish. You notice also that think of this as physical tension and relaxation and conflict. And not only is there physical tension and relaxation and conflict, but there's also an experience of time. The dactyl is a balance of time, a move that experiments with tempo from fast to slow. And the clap should be crisp and clean, like 2 blocks of wood being slapped together. And the energy is just shot straight into the floor.